Hello everyone and welcome to GG Weekend Watch. Eagle-eyed amongst you will probably realise that I am not Kate Tracy, and that's because the usual cast, the A-team, are all on holiday. Kate Tracy is away, Andrew Mount is away, Matty Sutcliffe is away, which means we're joined by Dave Young, as usual, and Joe Napier, who is GG's deputy editor. We're here to guide you through all of the ITV racing from Sandown this Saturday, the Jumps finale. Promises to be a cracker, and of course the big title decider between Mullins and Skelton. First, before we get onto that, we'll just go through last weekend. There was a couple of near misses for both Matty and Andrew, with Guido and Imeric both second in the 225 and 335 at Musselburgh respectively. But there are a few winners advised on the show as well. The first came in the 205 at Haydock, where Dave put up Give Me 5 as his nap, and only selection from last week, who defied a big drift out to 92 to deny the gamble on Got Grey under a great front-running ride. In the 3 o'clock at Musselburgh, Andrew was strong on the chances of American Affair, who won at 7-2 under a cool ride from Paul Mulrennan. Then in the following race, Andrew made a case to perm the 10-year-olds, but did state that his selection in the race was the Flyer Begley, who won nicely in the end at an SP of 5-1. Over to the racing this weekend. We'll get straight into it. The first race of the day is the 150 at Sandown, the Bet365 Novices Championship Final Handicap Hurdle, Class 2 event, 2 mile 4 furlongs, 9 runners, with the Skeltons risking the ground, currently top of the market, 4-1 with our sponsors Betano. Skeltons need all the winners they can get on Saturday. Will this be one of them? Dave, take it away.
I don't know if it will be. Like, it could be. This is a horse that's in flying form, isn't it? But it's going to be 3 runs in like a 10-day period. I feel like it's just got to catch up with them at some point. There's a few in this race that I think have got like reasonable chances, but they've all got something that frustrates me about them. So a horse like Mark of Gold, when he ran behind Rubaud at Kempton, giving him a bit of weight, I was actually quite impressed with him, but then he's just been a bit poor after, and he doesn't seem to win very often. The couple of times he has won, he beat Personal Ambition, where we'll remember Ben Jones had that horrible like last jump at the final flight where his arms were out to the side, and then he beat Soul Icon, who is a serial loser in himself. So I think there's a few in here that will be similar to that. Like, I could make a bit of a positive case for him, but I'd also have negatives for him too. It is a competitive race though. There's 2 I think I'm going to play at the prices that we've got available. The first of those is going to be Insurrection for Paul Nicholls and Harry Cobden. I just think this horse is much better right-handed. He handles quicker ground too, so that's 2 positives, because the ground at Sandown at the moment is good. They're flat racing on Friday. They're not going to get a chance to water even if they want to try. So I think it is going to be fairly quick going. His penultimate start when he ran at Musselburgh, he hacked up, beating Asta La Pasta, who's come out and won since under the same sort of tactics. That's a horse that needs to be ridden aggressively from the front. They did that against this horse, Insurrection, and Insurrection still managed to better him. Earlier in the season, he ran second to Springwell Bay, it was at Chepstow, so that isn't going right-handed, but that's a real good piece of form given what Springwell Bay's done now. There's loads of back form with this horse as well. He was giving Golden Ace a stone when he was 4-6 favourite to go and beat her as a novice hurdler. Obviously, we know what she's like now. Bit hard to use form that's from last season, but it sort of shows you the regard that he was held in as a hurdler from an early stage. He also won an enlisted race as well, ran behind Fun. That was a smallish field, but she's a borderline 150s mare now. So him rated 141. It looks like he's getting his act together for a meeting that I do think Paul Nicholls does target. And like I say, going back right-handed, I think he's got a proper chance. The other one that I can make like an easier case for probably is course and distance winner last time out, Classic Anthem, who was a very ready winner last time out. He's got exactly the same conditions this time. He is going up against a few lesser exposed rivals, because this is a novices handicap, whereas that was an open handicap last time. But I touched on it earlier. There's a lot of horses you can make a case for, but they've all got slight problems with them. So as much as they are unexposed in the fact they're novices and they haven't had that many seasons chasing, I think we know enough about all of them to think that Classic Anthem, if he does what he did last time out, could probably put in another bold show. That was good ground last time, but he's won here on heavy as well. So that's obviously attributing to the fact that he does love Sandown as a track, and that is a big thing that comes out every time we look at these fixtures. Anytime we come back to Sandown, horses that win here do come back here and win again. So at the prices, I'll play Classic Anthem and Insurrection, so both of them.
Excellent. And that is for the Bet365 Josh Gifford novice handicap chase, not whatever it was I said, which I think was a select hurdle. Brilliant start to my weekend watch debut. Hopefully, Joe Napier can do a bit better than me. Joe, welcome to the weekend watch.
Thank you. My weekend watch debut, and it's my local track, Sandown, as well. So it's a good one to be making my my debut for. I echo a lot of Dave's sentiments here, actually, as it happens. I mean, risking the ground is the obvious starting point, being the Skelton's horse trying to get off to a good start to try and cling on in the trainer's title race. But I just wonder whether he's now just a bit weighted to the hill. He's obviously also run quite a lot recently. Insurrection was another that I kind of highlighted as one who could step up, but comparatively, given that he's got a very good record on Sandown's jumps finale, Paul Nicholls doesn't actually have the best record in this race. He's had a couple of seconds in the last 2 years, but he's also had a couple of favourites beaten a surprisingly long way. And I just wonder whether actually Classic Anthem is the way forward here. He'd be my first choice of my play in the race. Again, echoing a lot of Dave's sentiments, he really likes the chase course here. He absolutely bolted up last time. He was very, very impressive. This is a hotter race. You know, he's stepping up a little bit in class. He's right at the bottom of the weights here, but he was very impressive in winning by 6 lengths. He was second the time before that as well, when he bumped into Es Perfecto, who was then 5th at the Cheltenham Festival in a much stronger race as well. So he was probably a little bit unlucky to bump into him there. And he was also given quite a lot to do from the back of the field that day. Even then, that second still proves he goes very, very well over course and distance. And even going back to kind of the start of this season, he was second to Brookie over 2 miles at Sandown, and that horse is now rated £20 higher. So yeah, that's very, very good form, and he was only beaten a half a length that day as well. He's Sean Bowen's mount in the first ITV race on the day, and hopefully he can kind of kick off this day that he's going to be crowned champion jockey with a winner.
Excellent. Classic Anthem to get us going at Sandown, then Joe Napier's local track. We go on to Leicester, my local track, for the 205 Carling King Richard III Cup Handicap, or after today's news, the King Jamie Vardy Cup Handicap. Class 2 event, 6 furlongs. It was, of course, once a listed event over 6 furlongs, but much like the football team of which it shares a city and I support, it has been relegated and lost some of its prestige. 11 go to post. It's a very competitive looking race with Completely Random, Trilby and Sergeant Wilko currently vying for favouritism around the 9-2 mark. Joe, how do you play this one?
Yeah, I mean, fittingly, if it was the King Jamie Vardy handicap, this is a sprint as well now. It's been a listed race. It's been a 1 mile handicap. It's now a 6 furlong handicap. So we don't really have any race history to go on. You mentioned Sergeant Wilko. He's going to be my play in the race. He's the only course and distance winner in the lineup. And he's a front runner. He did very, very well last season, went front running and wrapped up a hat trick across a number of tracks. And although we don't have a lot of race history in this race, this contest, when it was a 1 mile handicap last year, was won by a tear-away front runner. So Leicester does often suit those who race close to the pace. Sergeant Wilko, his last 2 victories, he was ridden by Sheen Murphy, who was absent for the last 2 races in which he was defeated, but Murphy now returns, which I think can only be seen as a positive. And he won fresh last term. He won first time out. So he could easily still be progressive too as a 4-year-old. There's maybe a slight ground query. His wins have all come on good, soft or softer. There is a bit of rain in the forecast for Leicester, but probably not enough to massively change the going. Nevertheless, it's kind of unlikely to be rattling quick going either. So I think a lot kind of plays into the hands of Sergeant Wilko here. He's up, £4 from his last winning mark, but I think he's still got probably a little bit more in the tank. As I say, he's only a 4-year-old, so there could still be a bit of progression to come. And I just think his star will suit this race, but it is extremely open. But hopefully, if he gets out to a good start, hopefully nothing will get past him.
Sergeant Wilko, King Power winner at Leicester. I'd absolutely love to see that one. Dave, Sergeant Wilko for you, or anyone else take your eye?
Well, BILLYJOH was the one that did take my eye, but I'll admit this is a race that I wouldn't really want to be getting too far stuck into. Like we say, been lots of changes to it. It's early enough in the season. I just thought it was interesting with BILLYJOH because it was a horse that I followed last season. He actually put up some pretty decent efforts. He won on his turf debut at Doncaster. That was when he was ridden by Frederick Larson back then. He was very complimentary of the horse, saying that he liked the ground. They did race him through that summer and then even last summer on a faster service. But I do think he prefers sort of good ground or maybe even a tiny bit of ease in there. So like Joe said, it's not going to get any quicker than it currently is. So the ground I've got no issues with. He's only had that one win on the turf though, and his other 3 wins came on the all weather. But he's had like some pretty stiff tasks in his like couple of years that he's been racing. The other thing with that couple of years he's been racing, they've never given him a break either. Well, I say they've never have. They gave him a break at the back end of last year, so end of October, and then he came back for a reappearance run this season. Now, the race that he ran in this season was behind Dark 30. Dark 30 is a horse that only ever wins fresh, or seems to win fresh. And Frederick Larson was back on it. It was the first time he's ridden it since riding the horse back in early May 2024. So they just look like pointers to be suggesting that maybe this horse is going to benefit from the run, is entitled to a benefit from the run. And the fact that Frederick Larson's back on board and he's won on this horse 3 times out of his 4 wins, it looked positive. From a mark perspective, he's on 92 at the moment. He hasn't won off of anything near that high, but he has been pretty close. He was behind English Oak at Royal Ascot when English Oak was handicapped to go really well. That horse is much higher in the weights now. He's had a couple of other like close efforts as well. He was behind Glenfinnan. He's also run another 2nd place as well. And all those placed efforts where he was only narrowly beaten were all on marks of between 90 and 95. So 92 feels like a good sweet spot. I think they've given him the break by design because he had a very busy couple of year campaign before that. He's bound to step forward for that first one, I think. And with Frederick Larson keeping the ride again, I think it looks like a positive. But as much as I'm selling the case there, it wouldn't be a confident selection by any means.
BILLYJOH, 23 races, by the way, between the 1st of July and the 17th of October 2024. That's 2023 July and October 2024. 23 races. Talk about owners getting their money's worth. Definitely not wrong by saying that he's in need of a break. Going back to Sandown for the 225, the Oaksey Chase, grade 2, 2 miles, 6.5 furlongs. 9 go to post with the Mullins trained and recent Aintree Bowl winner Gaelic Warrior at the top of the market, 11 to 8. £45,560 for the winner here, which could make or break the trainer's title. Dave, talk us through it. Gaelic Warrior or not?
Oh, it's a hard one because do we ever trust Gary? He's never won grade 1 or graded races back to back. He's obviously won multiple grade 1s. His Arkle win last year was a 172 RPR as a novice. He got a 172 RPR for his run at Aintree. And I think the only thing that put people off fancying him last time, because we've said this many times on the show, he was favourite for a stairs hurdle at the beginning of the last season. The only thing that put people off last time was Patrick Mullins, I guess. The jockey bookings looked like Embassy Garden was the first string. He pulled up as they went past the winning post the first time, and then it was just left for Gary to pick up the pieces. But I was thinking saying pick up the pieces. It sounds very dismissive of what he actually did, because Grey Dawning was tuned to the minute for that Aintree run. He had no excuses to get beat, and Gary battered him. So I do think that he is the best horse in the race. But I just have concerns like trusting him, especially when the price now is down to 11 to 8. I think he opens 2 to 1 when they redid this market. So I guess the right people would have been on those types of prices. But he would be a very, I guess, price related type horse in here. If you can get a big enough price to mitigate the risk that he doesn't always string wins together. You think back to Punchestown last season when he was a 3s on poke to beat Ilete Tomps. He got beaten there in a race that he probably shouldn't have lost. He's just done that one too many times for my liking. The only thing to sort of, not the only thing, but one of the things you can say as a positive for him is he's not stepping into grade 1 company again. This is a downgrade. This is a grade 2, and it's a pretty weak grade 2 as well. Gentleman to me is coming from winning a Topham, and he's one of the like higher rated horses in here. Hitman we know loves to come second, but he was well beaten in this last year when he was running against like far inferior rivals. Now Pick Door, he's the only one that really should be able to put Gaelic Warrior in any sort of danger in this race. But he's been to Sandown twice and been battered out of sight. So I started off looking at this race thinking Gaelic Warrior is going to be like a 4 to 5 poke, and I've got to find something to take him on. The fact that he is odds against makes me lean in his favour. So I don't think he'll get beat. Although that said, right at the start of it, the fact that he's not been that consistent and he's thrown a lot of howlers, you wouldn't guarantee that he's going to go and win it. But very price related like bet would be on Gaelic Warrior. I think anything sort of 11 to 8, 6 to 4 or bigger seems fine. I reckon he probably will go off odds on.
Yeah, I said I wasn't going to get involved when we started recording here. I'm just going to let you two sort of hash it out with the tips. But surely Gaelic Warrior is so much better than these. I did the same when I was looking at the race. I was basically trying to get him beat, but I just don't see how. Is there any way at all, Joe?
No, it's a hat trick for Gary. I'm also on Gaelic Warrior. It's a tricky one. Again, I lean more on the confident side, I think, with Gaelic Warrior than maybe Dave did. I mean, I think, you can kind of understand the concerns in terms of he's not always the most consistent from one race to the next. But like you just said, Joe, I think he is quite comfortably the best horse in this race when he puts it all together. Paul Nicholls' race record, I mentioned that in the first. His record in this is better, although a little bit worse the last 2 seasons. And when it comes to Pic D'Orhy, who probably would be the main challenger, he's missed the big spring festivals. He's probably been kept fresh for this. But he was well below par, as Dave said, in his 2 runs at Sandown. And I'm not really overly convinced. For all that it was a good performance, I'm not particularly convinced by the Oaksey Chase form either. He ended up beating Corbett's Cross, who that trip would have been far too short for him at the best. And realistically, it does look to be between him and Gaelic Warrior. I thought Gentleman Demi's performance in the top one was actually very taking, but he didn't jump overly well. And if Pic D'Orhy gets in a rhythm out in front, his jumping is going to come under a lot of pressure. It will for Gaelic Warrior as well, but he tends to be a little bit more of a sounder jumper nowadays. And he's also generally better going right-handed. He wasn't at Punchestown last year. It kind of speaks to his inconsistency. But that race that he won at Aintree and beating Grey Dawning, that was a lot stronger than this. Paul Town then takes back over. And he's just the class horse of the Mullins contingent and really this race. I think actually on the opposite side of things, I think if he wasn't a bit of an enigma, he would be odds on by now. And whether he will do or not, I'm not so sure, but I still think even at the prices, I think he's 11-8 currently. Yeah, I'd be getting stuck into that. I think he's a worthy favourite. There's always the nerves that he might, throw a paddy, but hopefully he'll string it together and we'll be looking at a winner.
Excellent. So Gaelic Warrior to win and surely Hitman's finished second. I know you said he blew up in it last year, but surely Hitman's finished second.
I don't know, because that Grand National run I don't like. I know everyone was saying because he always finishes second, he's won at a big price, but there are some horses that are very stamina laden that will be able to recover from a Grand National run. I'd be worried about that for Hitman. The fact that he had that run, it's not exactly a close turnaround, but he was just bad here last year, wouldn't he? But it would be very Hitman-y, wouldn't it? If someone's going to go and topple Gaelic Warrior, it'll be Hitman actually getting a win, wouldn't it?
Incredibly Hitman-y, yes, 100%. Over to Haydock for the last flat race that we're going to look at today. The 240 Try Unibet's new same race multis handicap, Class 2, 7 furlong race. Another really competitive looking race, this one, to be honest. Ed Walker's English Oak, currently top of the market at 4-1. Mayal and Skagusa. Am I right there? Sounds about right. Not far behind at sort of like 9-2, 5-1 respectively. Joe, over to you. You can have this one first. Who do you like?
Yeah, they've given us 2 very, very competitive flat handicaps on ITV on Saturday, which does make it a challenge. English Oak is by far the class horse in the race. He won very impressively on a couple of occasions last year, although he didn't necessarily maintain his form right the way through to the end of the season, particularly when upped in class to kind of listed and group level. And his mark of 108, that's gonna take some defying. He ran well enough when fresh last season, but he was only second off a mark of 90 to begin last term. And yes, he's £18 higher starting this year, and I think it'll be a challenge for him to give as much weight away all round as he's going to here. I'm saying that ironically, I'm going for a horse that's not necessarily a prolific winner, but one who might simply be too well treated, and that is Ramazan for Richard Fahey. He was very consistent in handicaps off marks in the hundreds last term, placed on a few occasions. The reason that I'm really quite interested in him here is he made his reappearance at Musselburgh recently, and his being in that race meant that his stablemate for Fahey, Our Havana, carried £7 less in the race and then went on to win. Ramazan was back in 6th. Our Havana that day was fit from the all-weather in Doncaster, so he was probably the one for the Fahey stable in that contest, but Ramazan ran in it and may have simply needed the run and benefited his stablemate by running in it. He's gone well fresh before, so there's maybe a slight angle of disappointment that he didn't really go as well first time out this season, but I think ultimately that was a bit of a stable ploy to get his stablemate really well treated in that contest. And Ramazan's best form last season could mean a mark of 99. He's dropped into a 2-figure mark. Looks very light. He was second in the Victoria Cup last season off £6 higher. He was second in the Great St Wilfrid handicap at Ripon off £4 higher. And he was also third in listed company. He's a former course and distance winner here as as well, only £1 above his last winning mark. And English Oak's presence, maybe kind of counter to Ramazan's first run of the season, means that Ramazan himself is only carrying 9 stone 3 pounds. And I just think English Oak might struggle to give him £9, because if the selection's on his game, he wouldn't be far off the kind of performances that English Oak was putting in Pattern Company last season. And so, yeah, I think he's well treated. At the very least, I think he's a good each way selection, because he should be fitter now, and yeah, is probably a good shout to at least threaten the places and hopefully maybe get his head in front for once.
Nice. Good case made for him. Ramazan for Joe. Dave, you agreed with Joe on Gaelic Warrior. You agreed with him on Classic Anthem. Do you agree with him on Ramazan?
I do. This is good. We have Joe back every single week because it makes me feel better for confirmation bias, if nothing else. But it's even the way that Joe's come into the race. So looking at English Oak specifically as well. Obviously, James Dawes had a significant setback, and we know that Wathnan Racing just buy horses to win at Royal Ascot. I wonder whether they might be going back to win the same race they won last year, or at least they're going to be looking to go to win something at Ascot. They've gelded him as well, and off the mark that he is, if he's going to be like a graded horse or the group horse in a handicap, they'd have sort of bigger targets down the line. But as Joe touched on towards the end there, like Ramazan's got a very close effort in a listed race before, wasn't being very far in that, and that's similar sort of standard of form that English Oak's got, except in this instance, Ramazan's getting £9 from the horse. And I do think this would be a race that Ramazan potentially could be targeting, albeit early enough in the season. The mark, like Joe's touched on as well, like he's only £1 higher than his last winning mark. He's got lots of good efforts in and around this number. I like Joanna Mason as a jockey as well. Now, the Haydock course form, he's 2 from 3 here, isn't he? He was beaten in a Group 3 behind Tiber Flow, I think it was, which wasn't a terrible effort in the slightest, despite the fact that he was sent off 5-1 and beaten 4 lengths. But that is testament to what people expect this horse to be able to do at his favoured track of Haydock. He was rated 107 at that point, and he was sent off 5-1 for a Group 3. He's now running off of 99 in a handicap that a lot of horses won't necessarily be targeting at the start of the season. And the interesting thing with Joanna Mason as well is she's a very good jockey at the best of times, but when Ramazan's been ridden for the first time by like a new jockey, he's actually run pretty well. When he was second in that Great St Wilfrid at Ripon, it was the first time the jockey had ridden him. When he came second behind the Wizard of Eye, which was on his second start at the beginning of last season, it was the first time that jockey had ridden him. And even if you go back a little bit further, when he was getting wins in the past, it was the first time the jockey had been under him. So he looks a pretty straightforward type of horse. Course form's there for everyone to see. Mark looks more than workable. The one thing that is wrong is the price. He's just way too big. So like Joe says, he's a pretty good each way bet in this race, I think.
Love that line. The only thing wrong with him is the price. Very nice. Back to the good stuff anyway at Sandown. Back to the jumps and the season finale there. And we have the Bet365 Select Hurdle Grade 2 event over 2 miles, 5.5 furlongs. We do not have Lossiemouth versus Lossiemouth, but we do have Willie Mullins runner in Kitzbühel, 15-8. He tops the market just ahead of Nicky Henderson's Lucky Place at 5-2. Dan Skelton, obviously, the trainer's title will be the main talking point on Sandown on Saturday. He does have a runner here with Take No Chances, who is 4th in the market at 11-2. Dave, in regards to the trainer's title, this has to be where Mullins claws back a big chunk, or at least pulls ahead by a big chunk, surely.
I mean, you'd think so, but as much as there was lots to like about Kitzbühel last time, there was a lot to make you concerned about him going forward. He's very lightly raced, so obviously he's going to improve with each run that he has, but he was basically just mental on the way to post before racing at Aintree. And despite that, he still travelled okay for the first circuit, but just did too much in the race. There was no way he was going to get the 3-mile trip doing all of that stuff. And he did stay there until pretty much the second last, where he was never really asked for an effort from Paul Townend because he knew he's done far too much too soon. Now, they have put the hood on him, but there's no guarantee that a hood will calm him down. There's no guarantee that he's not going to do the same thing again in this race. And as much as that was a 3-mile grade 1 and this is a 2-mile 5 grade 2, which should make his task easier, it might just turn into a bit more of a tactical race. There might be less pace on. It might be that he can be 2-3 in it, and it may even be the case that Paul Tannen's got to go on and make the running with him, which I wouldn't. We just don't know at the moment. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed to suit him. So he definitely deserves to be right up there. The bookies will be running a bit for cover because he was smashed at Aintree last time out, and they'll be worried that they're going to get found out this time. But I think there's enough in there to question him and think, look, if he goes and wins, I'm happy to sit back and watch him win because he could be a very good horse. He is only 5 and he's bound to improve from what he's done so far. But at the same token, He's only running over in this race because Willie Mullins wants to win some prize money. So it's not like this has been by design, and this could just be another fact-finding mission for him. They run him over this trip in a hood, running him right-handed now, just to see what they're going to do with him. So look, I think he definitely deserves to be favourite, but it's on potential rather than substance of what he's actually done. Similarly with Lucky Place as well, he's priced on the fact that he's only a 6-year-old, he's improving, and obviously was relatively fancy for a stairs hurdle. I thought he could run better in that race than he did. If you go back to what he did at Ascot when he only narrowly beat Blue King Daru when they were wrong at the weights, and then even when he beat Gal Road after, his form doesn't really stack up to being worthy of his 153 rating, which is the same rating that Kit's Bull's got, which came in a 2-mile maiden against nothing really. The only way I would possibly look at playing this race, because I don't think I would bet in this race, but if I was going to, I'd look a little bit at Salva, because I think on the weight, like the weight adjusted ratings, he's got a bit to find on official figures, but what he's actually done on paper in terms of RPRs and performances that I think he's put in, he's done just as much as the other 2 horses I've mentioned, Kit's Bull and Lucky Place. Now, he was smashed at Fontwell when Nemean Lion beat him, and that was back in February, and he's been left alone since then. The only grey area I've got in my mind is Gary Moore often has runners at Sandown. I guess it's one of his local tracks, but this horse hasn't been here. The only time he did go right-handed, though, was at Exeter when he absolutely darted up. And I've watched that race back a few times. It's very foggy in the finish. There's nothing to suggest to me that he can't go right-handed. However, he has been raced exclusively left-handed since then. So maybe they know more about it than I do. But then sometimes trainers get it wrong too, don't they? And maybe it's just the program they followed. It means that he'd have to go left-handed tracks. But we go back to that Lucky Place real kill win when he only just beat Gal Road. I think Salva would have beat him that day if it had stood up. And I think what Lucky Place has done since almost confirms that to me. So he's about a 7-1 poke, I think. I think if Kit's Bull is this special beast everyone thinks he is and puts it all together, then I don't think anyone will see which way this horse goes. If he makes any sort of mistakes, if he's too keen at the start or too keen in the race, I think Salva's the one that's going to take advantage of this. So he's the way I'd be looking in, but I haven't bet him yet. And I'd probably wait to see what happens in the prelims.
Maybe this is me reading a bit too much into the trainer's title thing, but you said it could be a bit of a fact-finding mission for Kit's Bull. But there is £45,000 on offer here to the winner, and Willie Mullins has enough 2.5-mile hurdlers to sort of go and probably win this one. So the fact that he's only got this one in it must speak volumes of sort of how confident he is that he can win here.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, he was absolutely smashed at Aintree, like he couldn't get beat. He shortened up for the stairs, hurdle off the back of that. And I know they've got the hood on, and Willie Mullins is the master, isn't he? He knows what he's doing. But they backed him, and they thought he was going to run well at Aintree in the fact that no one expected him to be so free pre-race or to be as free in the race. They might think that he's going to go and win this race, but it might just be the case that if he's too buzzy again, if he gets wound up at Sandown, it's going to be a sunny day. There's going to be loads of people there. As they come out on the track, you can get real close to him. So I think for every reason that he got wound up at Aintree, it could happen at Sandown again, which is why, like I say, my angle at the moment is he could just be the beast in here, but I'd want to see what he did prelims before I thought of taking any price about him beforehand.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm sure you can tell by the way that I asked that question back to you, I'm actually on him. So, Joe, back me up. Come on, give me something to cheer about.
There are reasons to be positive about Kit's Bull. He's clearly got quite a lot of ability, but as Dave mentioned there, he was mental before the race at Aintree, and he was just as mental during the race, unfortunately. He was reefing and tearing all over the place. He has so much potential as a 5-year-old. And if the first time headgear works, I mean, it's an obvious kind of point to turn to kind of reach for the hood. That could settle him down, but he's a young horse. He was so buzzy at Liverpool that I would be concerned as a backer of him as a favourite here. For all that, there's also a chance here, this isn't the deepest grade 2, he could go and absolutely hack up, but I'd be worried for now, and this is soon enough after Aintree as well. Lucky Place, I'd be a little bit more positive about him than Dave is, because he was actually the best of the Brits in the stayers hurdle. I mean, that didn't account for much, given that the Irish had the first 6 home, but he was travelling okay into the race up until they kind of turned for home, and basically just didn't see out the 3 miles. I thought that might be kind of a blanket reading of it, but that's kind of how it looked to me, to my eye at least. Nevertheless, he only won the Ascot hurdle earlier in the season by a length, and he was getting £6 that day from Blue King Daru. Now, I've mentioned Paul Nicholls' race records quite a lot so far. Again, he has a very strong record in this contest, and I think this fellow 6-year-old might be the angle here. He's a surprisingly young horse. He's one of those that feels like he's been around for quite a few seasons now. But yeah, he's got some very strong form to his name. He was 4th in this race a year ago, but that was a much stronger contest. That was won by Impere Pass, followed home by everyone's favourite Langadan. And those two had very recently, before that, fought out the finish of the Grade 1 Aintree hurdle. There's nothing like that kind of form here. I mean, the two favourites here are a horse who was a distant 5th in a poor running of the 3-mile Grade 1 at Aintree, and Lucky Place, who was 7th in the Stayers. So this looks like a much weaker renewal if Kitzbühel doesn't improve dramatically for the application of a hood. As I said, Blue Kangaroo nearly gave Lucky Place £6 earlier this season at Ascot, and that was probably over a trip shorter than ideal. This trip, a couple of furlongs further, is probably going to be more to Paul Nicholls' charge's strengths. I think these will probably be his optimum conditions. He's fresh from not having run at the spring festivals, very much like Pic D'Orhy. And he should improve massively. His previous 2 runs haven't been very good, but they've been on very soft ground. And actually, he's generally proven a better horse on good to soft or quicker. As I say, he's one of those that feels like he's been around for quite a while, but he's still only a 6-year-old. I just think he might be one of those that could easily be the biggest challenger to Kitzbühel if he does improve. And if he doesn't, I can easily see him beating Lucky Place off better terms here.
Yeah, and a nice each way price as well that you can sort of play it that way if you want. So Blue King Daru for Joe and Salva, but not too overly confident on Salva, Dave.
Not well, only for the pure fact, like I said, if Kitzbühel goes to post like a sleeping baby, then I would be semi-tempted to think I might get stuck into him now. And if he travels nicely in the race, I'd be thinking, right, I might want to bet him now. But that's it with him. I'd want to wait and see. I'd happily take a short price and back him in running. With the fact that me and Joe have both mentioned horse without him, though, there potentially will be markets without the favourite. And with the fact that Salva and Blue King Daru are both reasonably big prices, that might be the way I could look at playing it, to be honest with you. I might bet them without him because I think we're both in agreement that Kitzbühel could be just a standout horse clear of all of these, whereas the rest of them, you could probably cover them with a blanket. So maybe that's the way to play it.
Cool. Anyone at Sandown on Saturday, record Kitzbühel in the pre-parade or the parade ring. Send it to us on Twitter at GG.CO.UK. And yeah, we'll play it from there. On to the Grade 1, the final Grade 1 of the season in Britain, the Celebration Chase, over 2 miles. Crucially, 100k on offer to the winner here, which really could be a title decider should Mullins or Skelton win this. Mullins has a very strong hand. He's got Energumane at 5-1 and Il Ite Tomps at 6-1. Skelton, not so much. He's got the outsiders, Unexpected Party and Harper's Brook, 20-1 and 100-1, respectfully. Though, of course, the headline attraction here is John Bon, who is looking to bounce back after that Cheltenham Festival heartbreak in the Queen Mother. Joe, redemption day for John Bon, or are you predicting a first loss away from Cheltenham?
Look, realistically, this would be one of those races that I wouldn't encourage a particularly strong bet on. You'd probably call me crazy for appearing on the Weekend Watch for the first time and opposing a horse who has won all 16 of his races away from Cheltenham. But that might be, if I was kind of forced into a bet here, that would probably be how I'd play it. Look, I think if there's ever a time to take on John Bon away from Prestbury Park, it might just be here. He's obviously been brilliant at Sandown in the past, but to make the case against him, this will be his 3rd run in the space of 45 days. And the previous 2 runs have been in very tough races. I mean, not just in the fact that they have been the Champion Chase and the Melling Chase at Aintree, but they have been tough in terms of what John Bon's had to go through. He had to pull out some effort just to finish 2nd at Cheltenham after that horrendous error that he made kind of halfway through the race. That will have taken quite a lot out of him. It didn't appear too much at Aintree, but stepped up to 2.5 miles. Despite the fact that he ultimately won that comfortably. Obviously, El Fabiolo fell. That was going to be his main danger. Protectorat, because he was a stayer, just made John Bon pull out a little bit after last. He obviously won it easily. He's an incredibly classy horse. And myself and probably a lot of other people probably massively underrate the fact. I mean, 16 from 16 away from Cheltenham is a ridiculous record. But I just wonder whether those 2 races combined might have taken a little bit more out of him than would have been the case at this time of the season in the past. He had run at both Cheltenham and Aintree back in 2023, but his race at Aintree that season was the 4-runner 2-mile Grade 1 novice chase. And he went off at 2 to 11. So this season was markedly different. The fact that he was in open company and over half a mile further against a multiple Grade 1 winner in Protectorat. Look, I think if you're looking at kind of some cross-sport multiples and want to throw in an odds-on favourite, John Bon is the likeliest winner. Of course he is. He's a brilliant horse. But I wouldn't have expected to want to take him on. There is, however, a declaration that might tempt me into it, which is Ilete Tom. And obviously, if Willie Mullins were to win this, it would be game over in the Trainers' Championship race. I'm surprised to see him in the lineup. I thought he'd be out for the season, but I think he is another horse that is just massively underrated based on what he has achieved. Now, Paul Townend is on energumene, but I know jockeys probably don't usually do this. I can't help but think he's on energumene based purely on sentiment and the fact that it could well be energumene's last ever race. He was beaten very easily by John Bon at Ascot. I can't realistically see that being turned around because energumene was pulled up in the champion chase at Cheltenham. Ilete Tom, on the other hand, he's obviously been off a long time. It's his first run of the season. It's a bit speculative. You're putting a bit of faith in the fact that he's going to be fully tuned up here, but he's gone very well fresh in the past. His first ever run for Willie Mullins, he was third in a juvenile hurdle Grade 1 on his debut. And he won 3 Grade 1 novice chases last term, which is probably quite easily forgotten about. He won very, very easily at Aintree, beating Grey Dawning, and then beat Gaelic Warrior at Punchestown. I think he was a horse that simply improved throughout the season. And his form at Cheltenham, where he was only third in the Arkle, he doesn't really look like a horse that particularly enjoys that track. Now, obviously, he has to be fully fit himself. I realise the irony of me arguing that John Bon might not be at his best, despite the fact that he's been running all season, but Ilete Tom will be, having not run. But I just wonder whether, as I say, if you're going to try and take John Bon on at any time away from Cheltenham, these might be the conditions to do it. After a long season, after his 2 hardest runs of that season, against a horse that is clinically underrated and is easily up to Grade 1 standard if he runs to his best. Yeah, I think he could make this a little bit more interesting. As I say, it's not a confident bet, but I definitely want to make the case for him for anyone who is maybe looking at a more fanciful bet than simply going with another odds-on favourite.
Okay, so Joe, happy to take John Bon on, who is 5 out of 5 at Sandown, all in Grade 1 company, winning by a combined 27 lengths. Dave, are you that silly?
I don't know. That's the thing. Every run at Sandown's been a 170s RPR in it. And as Joe touched on, the only season that he's done the Cheltenham, Aintree, and then Sandown treble, it was like a bit of a cakewalk at Aintree, but he's took this as a novice. Like, he's a phenomenal horse, even at Cheltenham, but away from Cheltenham, he seems to be better. The problem with Cheltenham seems to be, I think, he doesn't seem to be as fast as Cheltenham when he's got horses to be like, well, it's like sort of surrounding him. Even though he got messed at the tapes in the champion chase, he was in a position as they went past the stands the first time that if Nico wanted to make him prominent enough, he could have done, and he didn't. His jumping just wasn't quick enough at 2 miles around Cheltenham to win a champion chase or to be in contention for it. That said, what he does at Sandown every single time he runs here is just mind-blowing every single time. And as much as it's the same trip as Cheltenham, it does feel like this is a bit of a harder race. And the types that win this in the past, even you go back to like Underso going to win in it, and then obviously we know Altior didn't necessarily really stay. We didn't find out properly. But the type of horse that wins this, I think, is more of a stamina-laden horse than a horse that wins a champion chase, even though invariably it's the same horses that do it. So I think he's borderline unopposable, but everything's got its price, isn't it? And at 8 to 15 or whatever he is, given the fact that he has faltered this season, and given the fact that the run at Aintree wasn't really that eye-catching, considering Protectorat has to lead to run his race, was restrained and still managed to get relatively close to him. So he's one of those, isn't he? As much as horses improve with age, he might just be starting to slow down a tiny bit, but he is only 9. He'll probably still get away with it in this because there isn't really that much depth in behind. You look at energumene that just absolutely slaps it out around Punchestown year in, year out, and they've opted to come here. The way you've touched on the Trainers' Championship like quite a few times in the episode, there's prize money down to 6, but there's only 7 runners in here. We've got 100 to 1 poke that's not going to do anything, which is Dan Skelton's. So even if energumene just plobs rounds and comes 5th, he's going to get 5 grand towards that Trainers' Championship. Even if Ilete Thompson and energumene both finish 4th and 5th, he's going to pick up 15 grand, which is the same as winning a race. But I don't know. I wonder whether Energumene will actually even run and whether Paul Townend might jump on Ilete Tomps. But Ilete Tomps would be the one that you'd want to take him on with, given that he did beat Gaelic Warrior. He's more unexposed. And the rest of them, like Edwardstone, Master Chew, Unexpected Party, Harborsbrook, they haven't got a hope in hell of beating a John Bon, even if John Bon made loads of mistakes. But I just don't think I would actually be brave enough to take him on. But I'd be very interested to see if Energumene was called a late non-runner and Paul Townend did jump onto Ilete Tomps after. But I can't see that happening. I'd just leave the race alone. I think he's just too short a price to back, but I wouldn't want to see him beat.
We should also mention Mark Walsh taking the ride. Of course, Nico de Boinville out for the rest of the season with injury, although based off sort of how he rode him at Cheltenham, some people might see that as a pro or a con that Mark Walsh is on board. But obviously, big ride for him, lots of pressure on him there as well to get John Bon that 6th Sandown win. On to the 410, which is the Bet365 Gold Cup, or as you can probably tell by the youth in my face, I don't call it the Whitbread. So I'll stick with the Bet365 Gold Cup because I was about 2 years old when that changed. Class 1 Premier Handicap, so grade 3, 3 mile, 4.5 furlong, 24 go to post, and it is all about Willie Mullins here. It's another 100k to the winner. He's responsible for 10 of the entries. He has, and I'll say it in market order, High Class Hero, Dancing City, Grange Clare West, Manila Kakuna, and they are the 4 market leaders, by the way. Then he's got Clark Kent, O'More Park, Lombron, Spanish Harlem, Olympic Man, and Chosen Witness. Dan Skelton, on the other hand, has 1 entry with Holy Smoke. He is quite well fancied, though. He's 14 to 1, so he's definitely got a poke. Dave, which of the Mullins horses are you going to be backing?
Well, just to quickly say on Holy Smoke, he doesn't have a poke. He's a stone out of the handicap and he's a bleeder as well. So I would be very wary of betting him, but you can crop that up and put it in a short when he dots up, can't you? Going back to the prize money stuff as well, because I know we talked about it loads in here, and it might be boring some of the viewers, but in this, 5th and 6th is the same prize money as it is for the Celebration Chase, except there's 20 runners in this race. So I'm still adamant that's the reason why Energumene's coming over, just to pick up some pounds, but we are where we are with that one. In this race, High Class Hero I didn't expect to be as short as he is. I know Paul Townend's jumped on top, but we've seen I say recently, but we've seen multiple times that Paul Townend hasn't quite got it right in the springtime, especially on these shores. And it seems like, obviously, with Willie Mullins firing more darts out there, he probably has a harder decision every single time this, like, for the last couple of years, given that there's more options and there probably isn't much to split most of them. It was a big red flag for me last time of him getting beat by Common Practice when he was a real short price. I know this is a very different test. That was only just over 2.5, I think, maybe a little bit further, and this is 3.5 miles. But I don't fully know whether it was as plotty and as by design as it's being made out to be. Obviously, Willie Mullins is going for the Trainers' Championship. If he wasn't going for the Trainers' Championship and High Class Hero was over, it'd be very easy to say, well, that was just a run in mind with this. Because he's going for the Trainers' Championship, is it as easy to say that now? I don't really think it is. He's not really bred to really stay either. So I can definitely see he's got a chance. He ticks loads of boxes on the trend profile. But I'm lukewarm about him at the price. I think he's way too short, and I don't think favourites have the best record in this race either. The ones that I think I can make a reasonable case for. There's loads of them that put out the handicaps. It does make it easier. But Manila Kakuna that won it last year, very easy case to make for him. He ran in the Irish National, didn't he? 3rd behind Intense Raffles last year. Was a good performance in the Grand National this year. And it's the reason why I mention both those races is he's the type of horse that does seem to handle those big stamina tests and then have a reasonably quick turnaround. And he loved it round here last year. He's only, I think it was a £2 high mark he's off, or he's running now off of a £2 high mark than he was 12 months ago. And I think this looks a far easier renewal with the fact that Willie Mullins has put some money out of the handicap. So you think these saddles slipped in that national as well. It's mad. And that was clearly a prep run for this, even though it's a Grand National, they would probably try to win there. I think he's got a proper chance. So he looks an absolute knock-in each way bet in here. And given the fact that Paul Townend's on High Class Hero, I can't imagine that Willie Mullins would have let Danny Mullins not have the ride, given he won this last year. So who knows? Maybe I'm making something of nothing there. But I think if Paul Townend wanted to, I think he'd probably rather be on Manila Kakuna as well. The one that is also very interesting, I think plenty of people would have seen this horse through the season and thought the same, is Resplendent Grey in first-time cheat pieces. His first few runs of this season, they're all good bits of form. He slapped up Holy Smoke very early on. He ran really well behind Highland at Cheltenham when it was quite a slowly run race, and then sort of stayed on quite nicely towards the end, which made me think maybe a drop back in trip would suit him. Then he ran behind Handstands in the 3 Mile Novice here on bad ground, and he did stay on nicely. And then even in the National Hunt Chase, he looked a little bit outpaced at one point, but stayed on nicely and stayed on stoutly there. This track suits him more than I think Cheltenham's National Hunt Chase track and trip did, despite the fact that he ran well behind Highland on good ground there. I think the good ground will suit him here as well. He's not a massive price, but he's another one that I think I'd throw an each way dart out with 5 places up for grabs. So I'd probably play Resplendent Grey and Manila Kakuna both each way in here, but they would be like token selections rather than me getting really stuck in, I think.
Nice. Couple of bets for Dave then in the Bet365/Whitbread Gold Cup. Joe, do you agree with Dave? Are you backing a Mullins horse or going against him in this one?
No, Goshen. I'm only joking, not Goshen. Of course not.
I wish I would have actually made a case there, by the way, for Goshen. I would absolutely have loved that one.
No, I love the horse, and I'm glad that he's still racing. Whenever I see that he keeps popping up in fields every so often, Goshen, I'm delighted, because it's great to see him race. And he's not a bad horse, but he's not going to be winning this race. No, I mean, you're going to think there's an echo in here again, but I'm big on Manila Kakuna as well. I think High Class Hero and Dancing City, for all that they're improving novices, their respective form so far doesn't really suggest that they should have the lofty ratings that they do, even with the British handicapper amending them slightly. And as a result, I think because of Grangeclair West's presence more than anything else, I think that really serves to give Manila Kakuna a great chance here. He'd be running off top weight if Grangeclair West wasn't running in this. And, you know, Grangeclair West is a horse now that's got a rating of 168. He was 3rd in the National. He was 2nd in the Irish Gold Cup. He's a Grade 1 horse. He could easily be running in the Punchestown Gold Cup next week and kind of be in with a shout. So I just feel like the fact that they're running him here, there's a lot of prize money, but, you know, even if they didn't run him here, they'd still have 9. They'd be picking up quite a lot of the prize money anyway. I just feel like he's in here to give some of the other Mullins runners, and particularly Manila Kakuna, a really good chance, because as a result, Manila Kakuna is only going to carry 11 stone 1 pound here. He carried 11 stone 9 last year. Yes, he's 4 pounds higher in the handicap in terms of ratings, but he's carrying significantly less weight this time around. It's a little bit of a shame we're not recording this earlier in the week, because there was 20-1 available at some point for Manila Kakuna, which was extraordinary. He's still a fair price now, though, and I think he might well end up going off of it as favourite by the time Saturday comes around. And like Dave said, with Paul Townend on High Class Hero, I don't think that really is a reflection on the kind of jockey bookings and the standings of the Mullins horses, because I think Danny Mullins was always going to ride, because he rode into victory in this last year. The 7th in the Grand National was a highly creditable run. He was still in a share of the lead at the last, and that was despite the fact that Jonathan Burke's saddle had slipped quite a lot earlier in the race. And yeah, there's always a slight worry of horses that have run in the Grand National and then still reappear that season. But he ran in this and won this last year, having finished 3rd in the Irish National 12 months ago. And he's 2 pounds lower in the weights now than he was at entry. I think he's a class horse in here. He's not quite Grade 1 quality like Grangeclair West might be, but he's still classy in his own right. He's running in Grade 1s for most of this season. And he's only giving £4 and £7 respectively to Dancing City and High Class Hero as examples, which, given that they're novices and haven't achieved anywhere near as much, I think that's pretty lenient. And as Dave alluded to, more than half the field here are out of the handicap. For instance, Transmission and Ho Jolie Smoke, 2 horses that, if the handicap was long enough, would be on pretty tempting marks. Unfortunately, they're £10 and £13 out of the weights. I mean, they'd have to be 2 stone well in to probably win this. I think most of this field doesn't have a chance, and that gives Manila Kakuna all the more chance of winning this for the 2nd year in a row.
Nice. What have we got prize money down to here? Would it be 7?
Top 8 it will be.
Top 8. Okay. Quick prediction, Dave. How many Willie Mullins horses fill that top 8?
2.
2.
Yeah. There might not even be that many finishes in there. The thing is, it's like, as much as there are loads out of the handicap, some of them will still run well and they'll finish into a bit of a place, won't they? And then you've got horses like Victorino as well. He's well handicapped, likes the ground. I know Venetia's well out of form, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as much of an onslaught as it was in the Grand National. I think he's got a couple of horses genuinely targeted for this, and the rest are in it just to do things with the weights or in the hope they might scrape some prize money. So, yeah, 2, that'll do me.
I'm glad you mentioned Victorino, because that's who I quite like the look of. Obviously, everything went wrong for him really at Cheltenham at the start, getting loose and terrible start, so slowly away. I think probably has a good chance of running into a place here. Joe, where do you think, how many Mullins horses do you reckon will be in that top 8?
Yeah, let's go. Torn between kind of 4 or 5. I feel like they'd be the 2 favourites. You'd have 4 at about 10 to 11, 5 at evens, and then the rest, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think obviously Manila Kakuna, I can easily see the cases for high class here and Dancing City improving. Grange Clare West is the class horse. And yeah, I mean, that's not even mentioning half of his runners. You could even have a look at the likes of kind of Lombron and Olympic Man, who are in the weights. I mean, that's what it could come down to. They're carrying the weight that they would do if this was any other handicap, whereas all of those below them won't be. So yeah, I mean, I say 4 or 5. I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised if it was 6 or 7.
Yeah, I'll take the evens about the 5 off you after this show. I think I'll drop you a message. On to the last race, the 4:45 at Sandown, the Bet365 handicap hurdle, class 2, 2 mile, 4 furlong. 18,000 on offer to the winner here, but I imagine the trainer's title is going to be wrapped up by now. 10 go to post. Joe, who do you like in the lucky lass?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the handicaps, both on the flat and over jumps on Saturday, it's very, very open. But Joe, I'm hoping we can end the National Hunt season by going bunting mental. Because I think Willie Mullins' charge might just really enjoy the conditions of this race. In terms of the Skelton runners, I think by this point it will be too late for him, for Dan Skelton, to kind of claw back any of the deficit to Mullins, because he will surely be away and gone by this point. But when it comes to Mostly Sunny, who ran and won only 5 days ago, this race is just an entirely different kettle of fish to the one he won. I think it was at Plumpton. At the weekend just gone. Sorry, not the weekend just gone, earlier this week. And yeah, I just think this will be a little bit too tough for him. But bunting, the case for him, he was the choice of Paul Townend in the Coral Cup at the Cheltenham Festival, a race which Willie Mullins won with Jimmy DeSoy. So the fact that they had the winner in that race and Paul Townend chose this horse would suggest that they really do think quite big things of bunting, who they clearly must think that he's ahead of his mark and held in quite high esteem. He followed being pulled up in the Coral Cup, where he was just simply too free. He actually travelled into that race quite well, but had nothing to give when the kind of taps were being turned, and ultimately was pulled up. He followed that up in the Scottish Champion Hurdle at Ayr back over 2 miles a couple of weekends ago, and he was 6th in that race. But I think a few things went wrong that day. He was hampered by an early faller. He was still quite keen during the race. But what's happened in the Scottish Champion Hurdle for the last 2 years is the race has really only started in earnest late on and become a real sprint to the line. And as a result, because I think he is a horse that ultimately will be at his best over 2.5 miles, potentially even further in time, he kind of just wasn't really able to make his way into the race from behind a wall of runners. He was kind of constantly running on through the straight there. And actually, there are a couple of other more eye-catching finishes in that contest, but if you look just behind them, bunting is kind of finishing almost as strongly as anything, despite the fact that Danny Mullins has kind of at least given up the ghost in terms of winning. I'm not saying he gave up and was pulling him in any way, but I think, his chance had gone by that point, but he was still staying on despite kind of tender handling in the closing stages. And what that meant was that he didn't catch the eye of the handicapper. He was off a mark of 139. He's actually down a pound for this race and back up to 2.5 miles. That just might suit him a little bit more. He's also the choice of Paul Townend today. And I just think he's only a 5-year-old. He might well have more in the locker. And it's worth remembering that last year he was part of a very strong juvenile season. You had the likes of Sagino and Cargese, but bunting was only beaten a few lengths in a Grade 1 at the Dublin Racing Festival and a juvenile hurdle last season. So he's clearly got quite a bit of ability. They clearly still think he does. And I think this race might just suit him. Yeah, there's maybe the slight concern, as there is a lot of the Mullins and Skelton horses, as to whether they've run slightly too recently, but I'm willing to forgive that and think, yeah, as I say, we'll go out for the National Hunt season going bunting mental. How about that?
Bulletproof
Selection then with bunting. Dave, do you agree? Fire away, fire away.
I'm loving all these external sports references this week. Yeah, I do like bunting. I fancied him for the Coral Cup. He was too fresh and too keen in that race. And like Joe mentioned there, Willie Mullins did have the winner with another runner in the race, Jimmy DeSoy, who in hindsight looked like he was I don't think, well, not in hindsight, he didn't like his well handicapped, but fans of Aintree, like we knew he was a better horse. I feel like that's going to be the case with Bunting for a little while. I think he is a better horse than 138. I can see why Paul would choose to ride him in here, given it's back up in trip. I don't think he did a lot wrong in that last run either. I'm a bit lukewarm on him, is the only problem. Like, he could definitely win this, and he's priced probably a little bit too big than he should be. I think he probably will come in for some support. But I quite liked the chance of Jump Allen before they even made the jockey bookings. And I was thinking to myself, which one of these two will Paul Townend choose? Now, I thought maybe the whole Tony Bloom thing, the fact he's going to be on like Energumene and he's going to be on Bunting, maybe he just likes to people please the owners. Maybe there isn't much between the two of them. But I looked at these two horses and thinking there wasn't much in between them. But I wanted to see who would ride Jump Allen. The fact that Willie Mullins has got so many of these other stable jockeys here, but Harry Cobden takes this ride, makes me feel like there really wasn't much between them. And they've gone out of their way to ask Harry Cobden to ride this horse. I think he found 3 miles just too far for him last time, but he won very well on his handicap debut the time before that. The second place horse in there was third in a listed handicap at Fairy House just the other day. I think he's got a load of scope off his mark of 128 in this race, now dropping back in trip. And the fact that Bunting's in here, and obviously we know that he's going around penny pinch and trying to pick up a few quid in prize money, I've got no doubt that Bunting will be able to fill the frame, but it might be the case they let him go out in front again like they did in the Coral Cup, and he's just the pacemaker for Jump Allen, and he's also helping him run off a 10-pound lighter weight. So I would be siding with Jump Allen, but I mean, at the prices there at the moment, I wouldn't be scared to bet both of them.
Well, yeah, so potentially another Harry Cobden, Willie Mullins winner. The sort of extended job interview that Harry Cobden is having for that man may continue. That is everything from the ITV Racing. The 8 races that are shown live there, obviously all about Sandown, but the Leicester and the Haydock race. But of course, is there anything from anywhere else? Dave, I think you're pretty confident on one somewhere, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. ITV moved about the card and all sorts, but there's one that I really like in the 120. It's the Novices Championship final. Sorceleur has been eye-catching for, I don't want to say the wrong reasons, but he's just looked like a horse that's much better than what he's been able to do recently. He was beaten on debut at the start of the season, then won twice after on good ground. In a handicap debut, he ran on soft ground, but I wasn't overly disappointed with what he did there. It just looked like maybe he just wasn't ready to step into that sort of level yet. But the mark that he's off now, he's off 118. All 5 of his last runs have been at least 117 RPRs, but a few of them have been in the 120s. He qualified last week, or just over a week ago, with 4 other horses, or 3 other horses that are qualified in this race as well. There was Kent Syme in there, there was John Barber, and Serious Challenge. Now, he was very tentatively handled in the finish, but he was giving weight away to all those rivals, apart from he was running off the same weight as Serious Challenge. But he's got a 12-pound weight swing with Kent Syme now. He's got an 8-pound weight swing with John Barber, and he's got a 10-pound weight swing with Serious Challenge. Paul Nicholls has won this race previously with the likes of Nappers Hill, who was another good horse at the start of the season, winning a couple of races on good ground and then saved for this particular race. He did the same with Getaway Trump as well. He was a horse that went and ran behind Champ in a shallow hurdle. So I think Sorceleur, he's not in the same realms as both of those horses, but off of 118, it's almost offensive that he's allowed to race in it. He's about a 9-2 poke, I think, at the time of recording. He looks a very serious bet in the opener at Sandown.
That was a pretty confident pitch. Yeah, I'm going to presume he might be your nap. We'll get onto that one later. Joe, do you have anything from anywhere else?
No, nothing for me. No, just sticking to the ITV races for me.
Okay, cool. In which case, naps, Dave, reveal. Is it Sorceleur?
Absolutely Sorceleur, yeah. If you want to go back and watch any one of his 1 runs, just watch him in the Imperial Cup. 2 out, he's basically last. And then as they cross the line, he was staying on like an absolute rocket. This is a far easier race. I think Sorceleur is the best bet of the weekend.
Okay, nice. Joe, what about yourself? What's your nap of the weekend?
It'll be Manela Kakuna for me in the Bet365 Gold Cup. I just can't see how he's not in contention as long as Aintree hasn't taken too much out of him. But for those who maybe want a slightly more ambitious player, how about the Manela Kakuna Goshen reverse forecast?
Yeah, okay. I'm sure on that one. My nap will be Gaelic Warrior. He's miles ahead of the field, as I've sort of said. I know that's a bit of a boring nap. That's why I'm sat in this chair and not the tipping one that Dave and Joe are sat in. But yeah, remember to keep your eye on the description, the YouTube description, because these naps will be boosted by our sponsors Betano in some way. Yeah, we'll leave a link below. We'll also put it on our X account. So yeah, keep revisiting and you can get some boosted prices on these selections. Right, that is everything for today. The A team is back next week to preview the 2000 guineas. It will be Kate, Andrew, and Dave. I think for the first time, we didn't have it at all in April, the deadly trio, as it were. But yeah, they're all going to be back for the guineas. So make sure you tune in for that. Thank you for watching. Thank you for putting up with myself. We'll see you next Thursday.